Welcome. At this point, I would like to invite our keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Johnny Taylor. So let me just read something about Johnny, because I think it's worth hearing a little bit of his background. So Johnny C. Taylor Jr. is President and Chief Executive Officer of SHRM. He was recently named one of the 300 most influential executives in corporate America by Savoy Magazine and recognized on the Virginia 500 Power List by Virginia Business. Mr. Taylor's career spans more than 20 years as a lawyer and as an executive serving at IAC, Paramount Pictures, Blockbuster Entertainment Group, and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, among other organizations. He is a member of the United Way Worldwide Board of Trustees and serves on the corporate boards of XPO Logistics, Flores HR, and Guild Education. He previously served in the White House American Workforce Policy Advisory Board and as chairman of the President's Advisory Board on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Mr. Taylor writes a weekly column in USA Today and is a fellow of the National Academy of Human Resources and a SHRM Senior Certified Professional. Johnny, so very welcome.
So good to be here today. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, thanks for coming. This has been a long time coming because I've been having conversations and others in academia with Johnny about this exact question: how can we improve our collaboration between academia and industry? So this is a fireside chat. It's a conversation. So I'm hoping that all of you will help me send a message from our end to Johnny, but also, of course, we would love to hear what you have to say about what's happening in the business world, the waves of disruption that are happening based on your perspective. So I'm gonna start with some probing questions, if that's okay, and then we'll just start the conversation. So the first one, straight to the point. Can you summarize for the community of doctorates in business administration and executive PhDs, what are SHRM members reporting to be their most pressing business problems?
Wow. Okay, you got time for this one. Not necessarily in order, but I'm going to limit this to the three that are at the top of our list right now, keeping us on our minds. Number one, wage inflation and worker productivity. That, believe it or not, is the number one business issue. And so there's a sort of a group of HR people who are focused on compliance things and all things culture and all of that, and I'm going to talk about that. But those of us who are now in an incredibly tough macroeconomic environment are feeling the pressure. Our CEOs, our boards, the investor community are saying we're at this interesting point where employees want more money, they want more benefits, they want more this, and we can no longer pass those costs on to the consumer. The consumer says, I'm not going to pay $8 for a cup of coffee. Probably shouldn't have been paying $6, but I'm clearly not going to pay $8. And so the squeeze right now is real. The consumer is not spending at the rates that they've done historically, while the employees continue to want to be paid more and more and more. And it's understandable, right? People are now paying student loan payments that were on hold for a while. Interest rates are still high, fuel costs, food costs. So I get it. There's no judgment in it. But the thing that's keeping us up at night is when employers are, and HR in particular, right in the middle, your CEOs are saying, do more with less. And you've got to make this happen. So the number one issue, I tell you, and I said I wasn't going to do them in particular order, but it is. And so the answer to that, of course, is worker productivity. And as we all know, I hope you all know, the data is overwhelming that coming out of the pandemic, we really, really, really saw a significant dip in worker productivity. So I want to make more, I want to work less. There's a problem. The math is just not mathing. And we, as HR professionals, are being forced to address that. So as you all think about what you're doing on your side, we've got to do something. I think, frankly, the AI, embracing of AI is in part because we're trying to, as CEOs, sort for worker productivity and wage inflation. One other thing, when we talk wage inflation, two quick observations about it. One is, and I remember so vividly, walking the halls of Congress in 2019, trying to get us to get to a $15 an hour minimum wage. That was just 5 years ago. Then the pandemic happened, and this funny little thing happened for those of you who might be wonky economists, like I kind of pretend to be on TV, is we took people and we gave them $600 a month from the federal government. You remember that $600 check? And then we supplemented with about $400 on average from the state. So people during the pandemic were at home, not working, making $1,000 a week. That's $25 an hour. So we changed almost on a dime the expectation from 7. We thought luckily we'd get to 15 over time to 25. And then people said, and you want me to work for $20 an hour? I was sitting at home making $25 an hour, during which time there was a mortgage moratorium, no foreclosures. People's student loan payments were held like I wasn't having to travel to work, so I didn't have dry cleaning, fuel, food bills. Like there were a lot of things that go. And now you want me to come to work, be excited to make $18 an hour. That's the problem, is wage inflation took off. And I want to be clear, no one is saying it's not a good thing. We're just saying that's what happened. Layer on top of this some new SHRM data that we're going to release next month. We have a group of about 40 PhDs, people like you all, IO psychologists, labor economists, et cetera, on staff. And we've now found that in addition to pure wage inflation, we now have something related to benefit cost inflation. The best thoughts right now are that benefit costs, insurer health and welfare benefit costs, are going to go up 15% this year. 15%. Now imagine going to your CEO and saying, in addition to the 4 or 5% raises that people want in base salary, we also are now about to see a 15% cost in our insurance. And that's because of primarily 3 drivers. 1, America's older. The longer people live and the longer they work, the more the healthcare cost benefits are, period 1. Number 2, mental health. 5 years ago, we did not have the rates of utilization that we have now in mental health and services, that is. And so as a result, I don't know if everyone has a therapist, not just your employee and your employee's spouse, but your employee's children. I have 2 of them, and I can tell you, all of them now want a therapist. Of course, there's those days I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never had a therapist. But they, for whatever reason, good or bad, they need them. And those are additional costs. We forget. It's great to say I'm going to offer mental health welfare benefits to my people, but someone has to pay for that. That's what the CEO is trying to absorb. They're not saying it's not important. They're just saying that's a new cost, that factor that we did not have in place, just 5 years ago at the rates of utilization. And the third cause of it is frankly not just prescription drugs, but what were historically considered not the mandatory drugs, but GLP-1s. I was trying to get that out. So the use of GLP-1s has really taken the cost, your pharma costs, through the roof. And so companies are trying to decide, do we not offer them? Do we only offer it to some people? Is it to people who are morbidly obese? Or is it people who are just trying to lose those last 10 pounds? Is it for people you get it? The cost, this work, what we call wage inflation, and wage generally includes benefits, is really, really on the minds of HR people. Quickly, the other 2 things. Civility or incivility is on the other side of culture. CEOs are really struggling, HR professionals. We have finally gotten to a place where our data tells us, historically they used to say, people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. The data now says people are leaving their fellow colleagues because of workplace toxicity. I come to work and it is horrible. We've calculated in a 2024 piece of research at SHRM that the average person who is subjected to an incident of incivility at work takes about 37 minutes to recover. That's just math. So think about the productivity losses. If you take someone who comes into the office in a day and they are in the garage parking their car and one of the colleagues cuts them off, throws them the middle finger, does whatever, you are immediately affecting that person's productivity. Forget their mental well-being and physical well-being of the whole deal. You're also now directly impacting their productivity. So we have now, sadly, got to teach people how to be more civil. You'd like to think that we all learned that in kindergarten, right? But as we saw over the last several months, up until last night or 2 nights ago, incivility is an all-time high. And we at SHRM predicted that this was going to become not just words, but that it was going to become action. and people were going to hurt people. We're seeing that in the workplace. There's all sorts of data that talks about the rates of workplace violence that are, and these aren't just the proverbial postal service. I'm going to go postal. I mean, in just regular employment context, people are becoming more and more violent, and we're seeing physical violence at work. So that's number 2, is this whole idea of civility. And the last one, of course, is what you've alluded to, and that is AI. How are we going to sort this AI and HI thing? We all forget that it was November 30th, I remember, of 2022, I think was the date. Maybe it was October 30th, when we introduced ChatGPT to the world. So we haven't been at this for long. It's like less than 3 years that we've been figuring this out. And as you pointed out, there have been about 5 or 6 versions of it since then. It's constantly changing, new players come into market, et cetera. And what we haven't been able to do is figure out how to sort this. What does it mean for the workplace? But more concerning from a society standpoint is, what does it mean for people, for human beings? Because there are 2 things that present an existential threat to human beings. It is a threat to their lives, which is COVID, or a threat to their livelihoods, which is AI. So lives and livelihoods. And so employees are reading every day, AI is coming for your job. And depends upon who you read the guy who's the godfather of AI, and he says 80, 90% of these jobs are going to go away. What do you think that message sends to your employees? You're creating just hysteria. People are scared to death. IBM announced they're going to lay off 8,000 people, and the headline Substack was, most of them from HR. We're like, oh gosh, this is it. By the way, I run a $300 million business that counts on a lot of HR people having jobs. So it didn't just panic the employees, it panicked me. But that's the issue, is we are trying to wrestle with what's going to happen on the other side of this. I'm working on a book right now. The working title of it is, and it's all about displacement. So the title is Displacement, Where Do the Human Beings Go? Because it's a fair question. What's going to be others? And it's the most educated. Remember, automation replaced blue-collar jobs. And we kind of were like, those are just non-educated people, whatever. This time it's affecting doctors and lawyers and writers, right? And so you've now invested in this education and deferred gratitude. You've done a whole bunch of stuff, and then guess what? You don't have a job on the other side of it. The number 1 highest category of unemployed graduates right now for the class of 2024, computer science majors. Just think about this. Computer science majors, not English, not anthropology, first of all, no one's majoring in those things anymore, but if they were, it's computer science majors. Imagine how angry you are if you came to Pepperdine, sent your kid here, and this is a very expensive school, very worth it, by the way, I have to say that.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Worth every penny of it. But this notion that you could have invested $400,000 of your money to have a degree that you were almost guaranteed 5 years ago was the gateway to a successful career, and now not so much. People are angry. Those are the big 3.
Great, thank you so much.
Sorry, that was
All right.
a lot, but I wanted to say,
Okay,
he
so-
asked.
Well, it's a lot, but it's straight to the point, and I think we appreciate it. So now let's go to the other point, which is, how can we help? And then just to describe who's here, I'm just going to ask for some hands up. If you are a faculty member at a university, raise your hand. Okay.
Wow.
DBA
Now I really feel not smart, but go ahead.
DBA students only.
Okay.
DBA alumni.
Wow.
Okay. Staff. All right. That gives us an idea. Okay, so, and I characterized this community this morning as, we are here to bridge that gap between academia and practice. That's, if it was implicit, now it's so explicit, right? And there's a huge opportunity. Jeanette Miller, the president of EdBack, was just sharing that this group is growing.
Yes.
Because there is a need. Okay, so on that context, how can academia and industry collaborate to help solve these problems and capitalize on the opportunities? What are the sweet spots? And I ventured on a tentative sweet spot this morning. I don't know if you heard it. I don't know if you were in, but I said we can, if we focus on complex, stubborn problems that take time to solve anyway, that could be a sweet spot.
That could be a sweet spot.
Also diagnosis, for example, in the context of all the problems you mentioned, about wage inflation, incivility. If you look at sort of the macro effect of population growth worldwide, I think that could be a partial explanation. If you understand the reasons, that you have a better shot at tackling the problem. So what are the sweet spots? How can this collaboration happen between us and not just SHRM, but us and all of your members, and all of your members who run companies, who manage the talent of these companies? How can we help?
So guys, there's so much that you can do, particularly because you're educating our future workforce, and we understand that. Whether it's at the undergraduate level, the graduate level, you are essentially manufacturing a product that we consume. That's the way we think about it from the HR side of the world. And when I say HR, I'm talking on behalf of all of business. We consume and we pay for, we buy your talent. A couple of things that you could help us with. Number one, the idea, and this may be a little controversial, and I apologize up front, it's not that big of a deal. It's just that people have different points of view about it. But it's this age-old question about, what's the role of higher education? Are you there just to provide someone training for a job, or are you supposed to teach them to be? And I think the answer is both. But what we know overwhelmingly from companies as well as increasingly from employees is that they go to school, surely, I want to be a better, smarter person on the other side of it, but I also want a good job at the end of this. And there was a time, I grew up in an era where it looks like many of us in the room may have been, where that wasn't necessarily explicitly the reason that you'd go to school. Now, folks are very clear about it. And we as employers who oftentimes and increasingly will be picking up the tab. It's not mom's decision. And it's even going to be less and less the federal government. It's going to be the private sector. I don't know if you know this, but just by analogy, the private sector covers, private employers cover 50%, a little bit more than 50, 52% I think it is, of healthcare for all Americans. 52% of all Americans are covered by employer-sponsored health programs. I think we're heading that way when it comes to education. So your new decision maker isn't where your mom wants you to go to school. It's where the employer says you can go to school, because the employer is going to pay for it. The government it's increasingly, we've seen it at states, and this doesn't apply to the wealthy children, got that, or the super smart who can get scholarships and the like, but the lion's share of people, increasingly the decision maker is going to be the employer, because employers are being really smart now. I was with the SHRM of IBM, and they had this new, not so new now, 3 or 4 years old program where they're actually recruiting 17-year-olds out of school and said, don't go to college, come to us. You go to school part-time, you'll work part-time, you'll do that over 4 years. At the end of it, you're gonna have a degree that we value, which will lead to a real job, and you'll have no debt. So we're gonna pay for your degree, give you work experience and everything. So bypass the tradition. Now that changes the full business model for higher educational institutions who have dorms and food services and all that, but that's for you all to sort. What I can tell you is you gotta pay that part out. What I can tell you is increasingly the point is you've gotta help us buy into this line. And when I was at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, just a quick anecdote, when I got there, the tagline was the best of the best. And I'm sorry, I'm a hard-driving business guy. I'm not an academic. I didn't understand what that meant. And so I said, we convened a whole bunch of people, did focus groups, et cetera. What came out of that, when we talked to parents, we talked to children, we talked to employers, children, younger people, traditional students, what we learned is they wanted education to pay off. So our new tagline, by the way, was where education pays off. God bless you. Where education pays off. It was explicit that you've got to explain to me why at the end of this $200,000 to $400,000 investment, I don't have a good job on the other side of it. So that's what you can help us do, is help your students. I'm not saying do purely vocational training, because the jobs that you prepare someone for today will likely go away over the next 5 years or be so meaningfully reconstituted until we can't expect you to just train someone to do a job. We do need people to think, problem solve, communicate, broad. So no question there, critical thinking, writing, all of that is incredibly important. But these people do need to be prepared to do something on the other side of it. So to the extent you could infuse sort of a practical side of this, how to get a job, and with the idea that you need to be a smart person, a thoughtful, deep thinker and communicator, do that. That'd be the number one thing we want to see. Getting the 4.0 kid who can't do anything doesn't work for us. It's not interesting. It's just not interesting. And you see there's a big push right now for walking away from the college degree altogether. That concerns me because I think that's a very bad trap, but we can sort through that. Secondly, and it's the second big sweet spot for us, and it's alluding to civility, but more specifically, diversity. Boy, a big topic these days. We have found that even on college campuses, people self-segregate. And that is a problem. We expect you to have used these 4, 5, 6, 8 years to use the opportunity for people to integrate and get to work with people they don't know. I think about my own background. I grew up in, neither of my parents went to college, all black neighborhood, blah, 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 black schools, da, 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 95% of the kids in my class are black, et cetera. The first meaningful interaction that I had with people who didn't look like me and who didn't have the same experiences was at college. And I attended the University of Miami, another high-priced school, and any hurricanes in here? Come on now, give me one, please. Okay, all right, the U. I had to get much love. Those are the geniuses in the room right there. But so I went there, and the most fascinating thing, and I'm going to tell you why I'm bringing this up. First year, I go in, and we're all sitting in a dining room. If you know anything about University of Miami, Miami is a very diverse city, right? But you go there. The white kids sat in one corner, the black people sat in another room, the kids, Asians, people, they segregated on the freaking campus. So you had diversity, but you didn't benefit from the diversity because people were not forced to work with people who were different. And I'm not just talking racial and gender. I'm talking viewpoint diversity. We need people coming to the workplace who start on your campuses. You can't just always agree with someone. We're doing something very controversial. This is controversial, legitimately controversial. I am convening Robbie Starbuck and Van Jones to have a conversation around DE&I. Yes. Yes, we announced that 4 days ago.
All nervous laugh.
Hell broke loose. Let me just tell you right now, from both sides. If you're on X, you hated Van. If you're on LinkedIn, you hated Robbie. And it's just really interesting to see that we have people coming into the workforce who don't appreciate true diversity. What they want is diversity as long as they agree with it. And you all play a huge, huge role in helping us prepare students to deal with the world where you're going to be in the workplace forced to work with people who don't see the world the way you do. And if you all could start doing that now, forcing your students not to just speak into echo chambers and talk to people who agree with you, you're going to help us a lot, because otherwise we're going to have incivility at work. I've told you how incivility at work is affecting workplace toxicity and productivity, and we need you all to do something. So in addition to the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, we need you to focus on making sure that these kids will be successful. And I say kids, you all know what I mean. Your students are going to be successful in a increasingly more and more diverse and in all dimensions of diversity. I'm not just talking about the civil rights categories of diversity. I'm talking all dimensions of diversity. We need you to do something very intentional about that.
Great. On the note of diversity, I forgot to get one show of hands. Raise your hand if you have worked for more than 10 years in business or corporation. Raise your hand.
That's
See?
really good.
So this is part of the neat situation here, is that we have the mesh, the merge between academia and praxis right here. So I believe we can help address the issue of education in business. But I would also like to, one of the things I talk about in my doctoral classes, there's a lot of debate, heavy debate. And so it's not just about being respectfully, but being radically respectful by stating it as it should be stated, no sugarcoating. So let me mention to you something that you said. So Johnny testified in Congress in February about this exact problem of, he testified before the House Education and Workforce Committee, and you said, yeah, there's some things we can do, but yet our system is still the best in the world. But you also said, you talked about the broken, leaky pipeline of education. So be candid with us. What do you mean by that? What problems do you see? And let's let's hear some of the problems that you think we need to solve.
Yeah. So, by the way, I started with it because I still believe, first of all, I'm a very, very proud American, will always be. And so we don't have it perfect, but we're figuring it out. And that's what I hope this conversation is about. And, but as I travel around the world, and we're in 180 different countries, we have ourselves, SHRM has 3 offices in India, Saudi Arabia, Dubai. So we're a global outfit. We know these things, but in our country in particular, very quickly, starting earlier on, we have this notion, and again, this may be subject to debate here, and that's good. People should have different points of view. We say, and we've seen this in K through 5 in particular, and oftentimes K through 12, you can be anything you want to be. I'm just not sure that's accurate. I'm just not sure. I think it waxes poetically. But the fact of the matter is, Michael Jordan could have coached me every day of my life. I was never going to be a good basketball player. We all have gifts and strengths. And what I think we should be doing is helping young people figure out where those strengths are. What can you become great at legitimately? Because all of us have gifts. It may be art. It could be computer science and code algorithm building. It could be a whole bunch of things. But telling people that they can be everything they want to be, I think sets them up for some real problems in life. My perspective and what we're seeing come through to the workplace. So when we talk about a system that doesn't help us help kids find what their natural talents are is a problem. And I think our system is trying to serve everyone with one sort of cookie cutter approach that includes the types of schools they attend, the types of pedagogy, be it virtual schools versus family, in-home schools, the homeschool training versus public schools versus, like there are just so many, and we've tried so hard to push people into one way, and that has created a system that is suboptimal. Let's call it that. It's not bad, it's just suboptimal. As a result, the system leaks horribly because we push people through and they're pursuing things that they will never be particularly good at. It's not efficient, it's very expensive. And we put a lot of money as a country into education, notwithstanding the cries for more. There's a lot of money. We spend money, but we're not necessarily getting the same return that we have historically. And you can measure that objectively, whether or not I just read this article, math and reading, I think it's quant and non-quant skills, like we're in trouble as a country in terms of needing to compete. So that was the crux of it, was not one size fits all. And then when you get to higher ed, we do have to figure out how to do this more cost effectively. Now, that doesn't mean you won't have the Miamis and the Pepperdines and the Harvards and the Yales, I put them all together, that you won't have higher end options, but we've got to be able to educate the masses with an affordable educational alternative, or we're going to price people out of the market and you really will create the haves and the have-nots. And the worst case scenario is to have someone attend school at any cost and then they come out with $300,000 in student loan debt with an undergraduate degree. And we are seeing that right now. And it is horrific to watch up close and personal. I was at Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and most of you don't know it. We represent I say we, I no longer work there, but I was the CEO for 7.5 years. We represent the 47 public, so state historically black colleges and universities all over the country. And there's nothing worse than watching a kid, first generation, come out of school, come to your school, take a degree, one, not graduate, 6 years later, leave with $150,000 in student debt. That's bad. It's bad for the communities from which they've come, it's bad for the individual, and it's bad for our society. So that's what we've got to sort. And I think part of the solution, just part, it's a multi-factor problem. Part of the solution, and we see it, is help people very early on. You don't want to get into tracking. I know that was a 1970s buzz phrase, but help people get more and more clear about what they can be stronger in and more successful in life. Because ultimately, remember, the goal is for them to get a good job. That's what most people go to college to get, is a good job.
Great. You did also mention at some point in some of the articles I was reading the intention to create a national strategy to align education with workforce demands. And so how do you envision that? Who do you see participating on the table? And I think that would be a good topic for us to have as part of the Q&A is how can we now just get to it and collaborate and sit and talk and solve problems.
So it's you all are the perfect audience for that. Believe it or not, most K through 12 instructors, teachers, professionals I saw this room. Most of you have been in corporate America. So either corporate America or in big agency jobs or whatever, you've had employers. Many of our K through 12 teachers have done nothing but taught. And so as a result, they're actually not best able to prepare students for the world of work because they themselves haven't experienced it. You, on the other hand, actually, and I loved seeing that showing of hands in this room, actually have real life experiences. It's really hard. We know this from our workforce development boards that I know the dean and I have talked about quite a bit. A lot of the people who are helping people, are the most fragile of our community, helping them get jobs, have themselves never actually worked in a real job outside of workforce development. So they're ill prepared to teach someone and prepare someone for getting a job, a good job. So we got to sort through that. How can you all do it? You can take your real life experiences, sit down often with industry leaders. And we're not suggesting that industry is always right, but if at the end of the day we're the people making the hiring decisions, you should at least know what's on our minds, right? Sit down with HR professionals. I'm going to make a pitch for this. Too often we want to go meet with the CEO. The CEO is over a company that has 250,000 employees. The CEO doesn't make hiring decisions, but for 10 or 12 people, his or her CFO, CEO, GC, et cetera. Beneath that, HR is the gatekeeper. They will tell you what's happening on the ground. Even the hiring manager will ultimately make the decision, but HR is going to decide if one of these 1,000 applicants, which 3 of them get to the hiring manager. So you've got to sit down and have deep conversations, which is why SHRM is taking the lead on what we call E-squared, which is education to employment, to say sit down and talk with your local HR professionals. And hiring is done locally. The temptation is I want to talk to Kathleen Hogan, the head of HR at Microsoft. They're all over the world. Find the person she's now the head of transformation, by the way, but find the person in your local market that you're hiring from and tell them exactly what you're looking for from a talent standpoint so they can start developing that and ensuring that your graduates are prepared with the skills, the attributes, the qualities that we're looking for. That's the number one thing that we can do. Poo-pooing HR as if, and I've heard people say, well, they're not the actual hiring managers. Well, they're going to decide who those top 3 are that get to the hiring manager. So let me tell you, they will weed out your best talent if you have not spoken with them on the front end. And I say they as if I'm not one of them, but that's what we do. Gatekeepers.
Great. All right, last question, diving a little bit more into the AI phenomenon. And you stated, I think, first I'm curious, you stated that there's 9.2% of jobs will be fully displaced, right? First of all, I'm curious where you got that info. Is that from SHRM surveys? Did you ask AI? Tell us how you found that out.
AI said 100% of that. We don't need humans, and that's my book. Actually, so numbers, it's a really interesting breakdown. And I'm going to try, this is the first time I'm going to try and explain. It's a little wonky. So what we did was we took the 160 million, BLS says 168. We believe the U.S. workforce is about 160 million people. We took those jobs, okay, and we said, which one of these jobs, when you break down the task of the job, so you can't just say nurse, you've got to break down the task of a particular nurse's job, because you have research nurses, you have patient practitioner nurses, so breaking down the task. And we said, of those 160 million jobs, and call it 350 million tasks, whatever, which ones of those are already more than 50% automated or automatable, like in current time? So we break that down. That allowed us to know which jobs could be most at risk for AI displacement. Then we went on the other side and said, take that number, which by the way is 15.1% of the jobs. The number is 15.1% of the current workforce. We believe the tasks are more than 50% automated or automatable and therefore could be significantly at risk of displacement. Now, of that 15.1% of people, of jobs, by the way, which percentage of those jobs won't likely be taken over by AI because of what we call non-technical barriers? So that first category to get to 15.1% is, Are there technical barriers? In other words, there's just too many parts of the job that are not yet automatable and therefore won't be done, okay, in the foreseeable 5-year future. Then we said, what about the non-technical barriers to it? And those fall into 3 categories. One is consumer preference. An airplane doesn't need a pilot, but none of us are getting on one without one, right? So even though technically it can occur, the non-technical barrier is consumers just won't do it, period. The second one is legal and regulatory. We know if any of you all are from New Jersey or that part of the country, New Jersey's an interesting place. You still, if you want to pump gas, you can't pump your own gas. Bizarre. I went there and said, what the hell is this? The guy said, oh, you have to wait. I said, I can pump my own gas. He said, no, you can't, not in Virginia, not in North New Jersey. And it's because the legal and their job is to protect jobs. So they've said, nope, we're going to keep those people who are pumping gas employed. And so there are legal and regulatory prohibitions that will prevent AI from doing what it wants to do. And the third category of non-technical barriers is cost. And that is if you run a small grocery store in a small town, yes, you could pay for AI checkout, but guess what? You can't afford it. The cost of labor is so inexpensive until the math doesn't work. So you have 3 non-technical barriers, types of non-technical barriers: consumer preference, legislative/legal hurdles or prohibitions outright, and then that third category of consumer preference, right? Did I get those right? 3, all right. So that, when you discount that 15.1, you then get to 6%. That's the end of it. 6% of the current U.S. workforce, of 160 million person workforce, of those jobs are currently highly at risk for displacement. The difference between the 6 and the 15%, I know this is very wonky, it feels like I'm a professor, but I'm actually just a lawyer, but the difference between 6 and 15 are what we're gonna call jobs that will be transformed. So there's displacement, which is 6%, and then the delta between the 6 and the 15 is are jobs that will be transformed and are highly likely. And right now we're working on it. Companies are going in and making the case to government. What do you do with people on the other side of this if we take those jobs? And the best example of it was in West Virginia. So coal jobs go away, and we had this theory, remember, coal to coder. Remember when everyone was rushing off to do coding camps? A lot of good that did, right? We rushed all these people to go out to become coders, and now AI took those jobs instantly, or most of them. But it was a perfect example of, theoretically, we could take these people and prepare them, skill them to be coders. It failed miserably, by the way. It just did not work. At scale, there were exceptions, but it didn't work. So what we're trying to do right now is, if we know that the number is 15% at moderate risk, 6% of real risk right now, like on its way, that's SHRM research, along with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and what's the group at the University of Chicago, the research team they're called? Why am I forgetting the name of it? I'll remember the name, but we work with them to do this research, and that's where we've come up with it. So those are the numbers. 15% immediately we think are at risk of displacement or transformation. True displacement, 6% of the U.S. workforce.
Great.
Does that help? Did that make sense, everyone?
Yeah.
That technical barriers, 50% or more, automation, you're now technically, there's no barrier to you being outsourced or AI taking your job. And then non-technical barriers will take that number down to another number.
Yeah, for all the...
All right, professors, did I do decently on
Well,
that?
yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah.
You're the teachers, like...
I
Just
was gonna
because
say-
you know it doesn't mean you can teach it. You all have the gift of knowing it and teaching, and I tried to do my
Yeah,
best.
I was going to say, have you ever thought about teaching
Oh.
in university? I was going to say, after with that answer, right? And then now, I selfishly would love to ask all kinds of questions, follow up to all of these things, but I'm unselfishly going to open it up for Q&A, because I know there's a lot of things people in here want to say, want to ask, so let's do it. Go ahead.
And tell me what school you're from and what do you do there?
Hey, Don, my name is Dara. I'm actually a student from SETU in Ireland.
Okay.
Based out of Rhode Island. So,
Okay.
the question I wanted to ask you was, we talked a lot about the negative, right? So transforming jobs, eliminating jobs. In your opinion, from your lens, what are the jobs of the future?
Sorry, let me repeat the questions, because for the mic. What are the jobs of the future?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million, $10 million question. We don't know yet, but we're seeing some interesting titles, right? So authenticator, the AI person, it's a quality assurance job that says, because they still have their own series of hallucinations, and you can't just rely on AI spitting out the advice. So people whose jobs are to sort of confirm that AI is right, or to bring a layer of humanity to the decision making. So we're seeing a lot of jobs around let AI do what it does, and then we need a group of jobs, people who do quality assurance, and it's probably not the best way to describe it, but that's what the jobs are. The other category of jobs, interestingly, are people who can communicate. So we're going to see a big boost in liberal arts people who can just technical writing and describing how these things work and how we came up with what is like huge right now. I can tell you, I was with Microsoft, IBM, and the OpenAI folks, and they are hiring technical writers like nothing you've ever seen. I mean, just on fire, because you've got to be able to explain this. If you want people to begin to use this product and these tools, they have to understand how they work. Have you ever bought something and I don't even know how to put this damn thing together because the people who wrote the instructions, it just didn't make sense. So technical writing, and it's not just writers, they have to have a technical and business background. So it's a big, big area. Another third area, and I'm gonna give you just two more. One is ethics. Big space on AI ethics and figuring out what it can do versus what we're going to allow it to do and what's the right balance. So tons of work around that. And the fourth category is all around AI policy. Like, how do you do this in a responsible way that strikes the right balance? So a lot of space for people who are policy thinkers, not necessarily lawyers or legislators, but the policy people. And we're looking for business people because you'll understand how the ripple effect, unintended sometimes consequences of the AI policy.
Great. I've thought about this quite a bit. I just want to say one word: accountability.
Yes, accountability.
Humans will always be the ones accountable.
That's right.
All right. In the back, over there. Yeah, the lady.
Hi, I'm Lynn Anderson. I'm a faculty member at Temple University.
Yes, simple.
Johnny, I'm so heartened to hear you advocate for higher pay for workers, for equity. I wanted to ask you, because SHRM has notoriously been a little bit anti-union and anti-labor. But many people think that this moment can only be met by workers striking. Stopping our work can only change this political moment. So I'm wondering if SHRM's going to have any change of heart about unions and the labor movement.
Oh, man. Thank you for that question. No, that's a great question.
Question is about a position of SHRM about labor unions.
Yeah, so it's something I've worked on since I got here. I've been in the CEO job now for 8 years. And if you haven't noticed, yes, SHRM, it's by definition our name. Management is in our name. So, and it goes back to the day when HR was there to represent management. We're paid by management, we're hired by management, we do management's work. I have long been a believer that you can't do that. We have to represent the interest of both. I can't leave it up to the unions to be the protectors of the employees, and we only protect companies. And so we have been moving, if you haven't noticed, some of our work over. Even the most recent selection of the Secretary of Labor was proof. She was a supporter of the PRO Act. We supported her. Those of you who don't know, I was shortlisted for Secretary of Labor under I guess 4 or 5 months ago. That was hell because I didn't want to do it. I love my job. I know it, and there's no way I'd do it right now. But that's exactly our point, is we're getting to the middle. What's good for both? What's good for business and good for employees? And we've got to find that sweet spot that you refer to. It's not easy. We're working on something right now that really, we're going to watch what happens. For example, in Canada, they just negotiated their new union contract. Who will pay for it is the question. If you take prices up, salaries and wages up 25%, someone's got to absorb it. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but the reality is someone, either the shareholders are going to take less profit, or the employees are going to, and when the employees take more money, or vice versa, or you're going to lay off some employees. Like, we're now studying what happens after a union contract. Because you win, and then maybe you don't. Countless examples. I'm on a board of a big company called XPO, Fortune 500 logistics company. And I can tell you, there was another player, Yellow Trucking. You all familiar with the Yellow company? 99 years old. Their union dug in hard, struck them, and the company went away. Gone. There is no more Yellow Truck, 99 years old. Now, that's, again, not SHRM saying that's good or bad, but I'm saying we have to understand that there has to be balance because the company goes out of business if they can't make money. But they also shouldn't take advantage of employees and just make hordes of money and not take care of their employees. So we just got to find a balance. And that's what SHRM is going to be far more focused on, is getting that balance right, not be just pro-management.
Great. I'm going to use the analogy of the concert where this singer is doing a tremendous job. And I'm going to go a little over time, and it's okay with you. One more question. And I don't know what to do. There's so many hands. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Two questions. I'm Arun from investment banking. I'm also a DBA candidate from Marshall University.
Okay. West Virginia?
West Virginia.
All right.
Marshall University.
You talk about polycrisis in many areas.
Yes.
What is the polycrisis in higher education that we need to focus on, number one? Number two, you talk a lot about education to employment. I was thinking you should start focusing more on education to employability.
Interesting.
And education to entrepreneurship. Because
Yes.
those two are different mindsets, which could give lifetime employability, but not lifetime
Employment. That latter, that's a really good point. Tony, remind me of that. I'm like, that's a really nice, I'll take that friendly amendment to my, that's a really good one. We talk about employability, and that's very, very good. And you can be employed by someone, or you can become an employer. Very good point. I like that. The earlier point, that's a really, but first of all, I'm not a higher ed specialist, I'm not an education specialist, but what we do know, to answer your question, is the polycrisis of sorts, and everyone knows by definition polycrisis, just a lot of these things happening at once. One, it's an affordability problem. We want accessibility of education, but it's becoming increasingly too expensive for people to take advantage of. So that's a big storm, one of the big crises. The second one is, on the other side of it, do people get jobs? The perception about the value of higher education. It's a big question mark now. In our lives, we used to always say you make $1 million more over your lifetime by going to college without a college degree. That is a big question mark increasingly. So I think that is also a value of education crisis that we are experiencing as a country. And then thirdly, is perhaps the biggest one is are people employable at the end of it? So it's a value question, but also, are you employable? And what does that mean in the future? Employability. You put those three things together, and I'm worried about higher ed generally. The government is questioning, state governments, but even at the federal government, how do we fund these things? I say this, just one final point on that one. I was not a big proponent of unlimited, let me say this the right way, Parent Plus loans when I was at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. I just saw so many people with grandparents having their Social Security checks and their homes taken because they wanted their kid to go to school, and they took on these debt outside of the subsidized student loan programs that were essentially private debt. And you saw kids whose grandparents were now 70 years old, and the government was garnishing their checks or taking their homes. And that was, I just wasn't a big proponent of it. So we've got to figure out to get the cost equation right and to make sure that people don't take on more debt than they can reasonably afford.
Great. I think, unfortunately, we have come to an end. Thank you so much.
I could have fun with you all. This,
Yeah,
I see
I
some
know.
great questions.
Thanks so
Can
much.
she get one more?
Okay,
Two
yes,
questions?
let's do that, yes.
She was like the first hand, but we just got to it. Yes.
And I have a really special message for you too.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Christopher Benson.
Can you get on the, do you have a special message?
I do.
All right.
I got it.
The roving reporter.
So my name is Masha. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh,
And,
the Lou.
University of Missouri St. Louis.
Yes.
GPA scholar.
Yes.
faculty. And Christopher Benson.
Yes,
Hello.
from Lily. From Lily. Yes,
and,
yes.
Brian Metcalf.
Yeah,
So
everybody. Okay.
Yeah, and you're meeting with Ken Oliver.
Yes.
Tomorrow. So we have.
She knows my whole life. Ken Oliver, by the way, runs JUMP, which is a big program that we're supporting for the formerly incarcerated. So Second Chance is giving them true second chances to high quality jobs.
Yes. So that is my question to you. What is the trend for second chances with the role that you play in human resources?
Okay, very brief. The trend is our friend with one caveat. In high unemployment environments, people become more selective and more exclusive, not the opposite. So it remains to be seen if we will see all of the progress that we've made over the last 5 to 7 years. SHRM took that on as a specific initiative in 2018, Second Chance Act. We actually helped make the second chance law, the federal government law. But it's a real, I'm concerned right now that when people can start being more selective, when you had 2.5% unemployment, we were taking people if you had a pulse rate. Like if you could just breathe, we'll take you. And now the world is changing, and so we are having a renewed focus, which is why I'm partly in LA tomorrow to have a conversation with them and the Progressive Policy Institute to say, how can we ensure that we don't lose ground in this incredibly important work, because we have to give people second and frankly some third chances. So that's what we're working on. But thank you for that shout out.
All right, the time is up. I want to ask all of you one question. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Big hand, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I have one last question for the audience that I want to answer to you. Do you think we can help Johnny and SHRM and the business world change and address all the problems that he's talking about? Do we think so? Yes. So,
Especially, I saw some rumblings on DE&I. Listen, we need to hear from you. It's not enough to be pissed off and point your fingers and say, these people don't agree. Make us understand why we should agree. You can look it up. We have it on site. We have CEO Action. When you go to shrm.org, put your name in there. I just met with an African-American woman who leads a diversity initiative at Harvard, and she has some damn good research, to your point, and to people in this room. But guess what? None of us knew it. The CEO community doesn't know it. So it's not okay for you to sit and say, we got the research that's sitting in your office. If we don't know, then we can't advocate for it. So I hope no one walks away thinking that SHRM is right of center on these issues or whatever. We just need to be able to defend them. And if you have great research to help us defend them, we're going to do it. Finally, I just got to say, John Lindo, Doc, is he in the room? There is. He just walked. This is one of your recent grads. Come on in real quick. He is the reason that I'm here. So I took it. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Absolutely. Aside from my static electricity. But John wrote me, and I reached out to him when he was in the middle of his doctoral research, which, if I remember right, was on remote work and the propensity to whistleblow or something like that, right? Really good work. I understand you're publishing it. But he reached out, and I said, I am swamped. I just left LA Tuesday. And I had to come back, but I was not going to miss it because this guy told me I needed to be here. So I want to thank him publicly for inviting me, and to all of you for listening.
everybody needs to thank John. Thank John and thank Johnny. Thanks so much, Johnny. It was great. Thank you so much.